So, for those who don't know me, I am Şeref Emre AKTUÐ and also a senior student in Trabzon University. And I'm going to be talking about the common problems that students face, the learners face during their spoken performances. And my research title is Turkish High School EFL Learners Inefficiency on Speaking Skills. Your teachers suggested solutions, and my thesis advisor was Dr. Şeref, and I want to thank him again for his support during the process. So, before I start with the details of the research, I want to talk about my mindset, the research mindset. What did I think before I conduct the study? So, I'm going to be starting with a very famous and cliche quotation. And it is, I can understand, but cannot speak. Actually, this is a very famous saying amongst the EFL learners. However, we think that it is funny, but it is actually not. It's really tragic, because what we should understand from this sentence is that the one who says this is a receiver. And we need to ask a question, why do we learn the language at the first place? We learn the language in order to communicate with each other, right? So if we can understand whatever we hear or whatever we read, but cannot respond according to it, there's no real communication. We cannot say that there's a real communication because it's meaningless. There's no dialogue, there's no mutual understanding, right? So I wanted to conduct my study specifically on speaking skills of the EFL learners, because this area is really problematic, as you will see in the following sections. So speaking is the easiest and fastest way to convey information or feelings. And also, according to McKay, Davis, and Fanning, speaking helps us to express our observations, thoughts, feelings, and needs. And also, while talking about the importance, the significance of speaking, we cannot ignore a term which suggested by Celsa Murcia in the communicative competence model. We need to know what the communicative competence is about, because this research is basically grounded on this principle. So what does this mean? The communicative competence roughly refers to one's ability to use language in order to communicate. So using the language, overall language knowledge, in order to communicate with each other. So let's go on with research purposes. Actually, I had two purposes while conducting this study. The first purpose was to investigate the reasons why EFL learners in Turkish high schools have difficulties with developing their speaking skills. And the second purpose was to present possible solutions to overcome these problems. Moving on with the research questions. I had 3 research questions while conducting this study to be answered in order to fulfill the purpose. First question was, how much importance is given to learners' speaking skills in EFL classrooms in Turkish high schools? The second question was, where lies the problem of producing the language when it comes to speaking? And third and the last question was, what are the possible solutions to overcome learners' speaking related problems, and what can be done in order to develop their communicative competency? Moving on with the research design and data collection, very briefly. So this is a qualitative study. So the study was conducted in accordance with the qualitative research design principles. And accordingly, study used interviews to collect the data. Interview form consisted of 8 items. 7 of those were the main questions of the form, while 1 additional item was added at the end of the form as a comment section, in case the participants had anything else or more to say about the related topic. 10 EFL teachers answered those questions. So the participants were 10 EFL teachers working at high schools in different regions, different cities, and different schools in Turkey. And to analyze the data, content analysis was made in order to categorize the findings. So moving on with the findings, what the study reveals. So let's remember the first research question. How much importance is given to the speaking skills of EFL learners in Turkish high schools? According to the study, all of the participants agree that they give a great amount of importance to their learners' speaking skill developments. As one of the participants says, what is the point of learning a language if you cannot speak it? And this is, I think, the main point of this research, right? However, things are not, like as it seems. Apparently, there's a conflict emerges from the research because nearly half of the participants confessed the fact that they do not conduct communicative activities in the classes, even though they value their learners' speaking skill developments. So this problem needs to be resolved. What about the second research question? What are the speaking related problems? There are major and minor problems that hinder learners' speaking performances. And we're going to be seeing them on the left side. We're going to be seeing the major problems, and on the right side, we're going to be seeing the minor ones. So starting with the major ones. Lack of motivation was one of the biggest problems, in the classrooms for EFL learners that hinder their learning performances. Moving on with the anxiety, fear of making mistakes, forces students to remain silent in the classrooms quite often. Also, peer pressure was another thing as a major factor, according to the participants, which hinders learner speaking performances. Moving on with the minor ones. Insufficient resources, and what do we mean by resources? It is time-related problems, maybe, and materials used in the classrooms to teach. So time limitations for each class, like 30 minutes, as we all know from the online education system right now. 30 minutes is not enough for anything to cover. And also the materials used in the classrooms. Actually, half of the participants claim that the Monet course books are actually designed in a way that they should be able to develop the learner's speaking skills. However, in reality, the other half of the participants say that they are not efficient enough to really, in terms of lack of exposure, the authenticity. I'm sorry. So university examination was another thing suggested, indicated by the participants as a minor problem. And lastly, lack of exposure. I mean, lack of authentic language exposure causes learners to, neglect or, cannot develop their speaking skills. So moving on with the suggested solutions. So we have a table here. On the left side, we're going to be seeing the problem areas, and on the right side, we're going to be seeing the suggestions related to those problem areas. Let's remember the problems. Lack of motivation, anxiety, insufficient resources and exposure, and university examination. So what can be done in order to solve the motivation problem? Participants suggest that conducting activities that meet the learners' needs and interests, give them a good reason to, they think that their learners lack motivation because they don't have a good reason to talk. They don't have the opportunity to express themselves, authentically, so in a meaningful way. That's why they prefer to remain silent in classrooms. For the anxiety, they claim that providing a stress-free learning environment would definitely keep them engaged in the activities. And, this is another thing. What about the insufficient resources and exposure? Participants suggest that learners should be provided with more opportunities to practice their speaking skills with authentic materials. And so, a few of the participants also said that learners should be also autonomous and they should take responsibility of their own learning. And the last and the most important problem area, according to the study, is university examination. And they suggest university examination should also assess learners' spoken performances in addition to other skills. Moving on with the discussion part. Actually, at this part, I just want to talk about a previous research conducted by Duygu Baykal back in 2010. So Baykal, just as I did, she conducted a study investigating the communicative barriers in Turkish EFL learners. However, there was a slight difference between the two research. I conducted the study with high schoolers, while Baikal did the collecting the data from university students. And this is actually the point of my research. When we compared two research in terms of findings, Baikal found that university level students think that speaking skills are actually important, while in my study the students think that speaking skills and communicative activities conducting in the classrooms are a total waste of time, because they need to prepare for the university examination, and they think that waste of time because it is irrelevant. They're not assessed on their spoken performances to get high scores from the examination. But according to Baikal's study, she found that in university, students are eager to learn, and develop their communicative areas in the language, since they do not have the anxiety of university examination anymore. Right, so that was my point, and the study has ended. Thank you for listening, and now you can feel free to ask your questions about the research.
Thank you, Şeref. Okay,
Welcome.
so maybe we might start with your friends. So everybody, would you like to make any comments or questions? Or you might add something?
Actually, I talked about pretty much everything. I don't have anything to add. I can just answer the questions if there's any.
Furkan, okay, please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Thank you. Hello.
Okay, hello everyone. Can you show me the 8th presentation again, please? The table.
The table?
Yes.
Okay, this one.
Here you said as a suggestion for the university examination problem, you said the speaking skills should be assessed in the university exam. So do you really think that is it possible? Like there are millions of students
actually
that exam.
Yeah, I get your point, but actually, before I say anything about this, those suggestions are, given by the participants. Those are not my own ideas. However, I agree the fact that it should be, just think about the KPSS, and it has two different stages, right? So university examination, according to the participants, university examination can be modified in a way that assessing writing test-related skills first, just as right now, right? Grammar and reading comprehension. And at the second stage, the students can be assessed on their spoken performances and listening abilities. So two different dates and two different times. It can be, I think it can be possible. Why not?
But millions of students are taking the university exam.
Yes.
That's a great workload.
Yeah, it's a great workload.
Of course, we want it to be that way.
But the education is the most important thing, so it should be done.
It should be done. Okay, this is the thing we've been saying for years.
It is not.
It isn't impossible. It hasn't been performed yet.
What is not impossible can be doable. So.
Okay, we'll see. But in which levels your teachers teach?
Levels B1, B2, I guess, because it is specific.
No, I mean, are they, for example, high school teachers teaching to
yes, of course.
language class students? Because
yes, of course.
Because here we see they regard university examination as a problem area, and they suggest that there needs to be speaking assessment, writing assessment. So this is what makes me think these teachers, they are possibly teaching to high school students who are going to take the foreign language exam as part of university entrance examination.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. But okay, let me ask you one thing. So this is a question to you and to everybody. So how how much competent our teachers teach their learners become competent in communication? So what do you think about this? Do you think our teachers competent enough to be able to teach communicative competence to their learners?
For me, majority of them lack communicative skills in terms of competency. Majority of them. I'm talking about the primary, second, and high school teachers, of course, not university. But yes, majority of them lack competency in terms of speaking. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that's the reality.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we've become, I mean, as a nation, we've become notorious for not being able to speak English.
Yes.
So we need to change the teacher quality in schools. Definitely. And we need to begin with them. So they are not the students to put the blame on, but the teachers. We need to start with them. So teacher education, I mean, not the pre-service, but also in-service teacher education is also important. So we need to help them. We need to do something for them.
Yep.
And you also talked about resources.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go to your findings once more?
Yes, I can.
Because your teachers also criticized the resources not being able to effective, insufficient, as they said.
Yes.
Time they said, because we know that, okay, there's the curriculum that the teachers need to follow, so they cannot be flexible that much, or they cannot spare that much time for speaking activities, which are time taking. And there are lots of students in classes, and language classes are generally crowded. And we know that they need to be smaller. So I guess this is another problem in terms of resources. Course books, they criticized. So, okay, some of your friends are presenting studies or examinations of course books, but do you think what makes course books that much inefficient? So why are they criticized so much?
I don't really know. And, there's a famous act among the EFL teachers, actually. Even before they evaluate the materials, they tend to make students buy something else as a resource, right? Because I experienced the same thing. We entered the classroom at the first day of the class, and our teacher said to us, "We're not going to be using the Monet course books because they're inefficient. We're going to be buying the new ones." This is the reality for most of the teachers.
It still goes on.
And also, I know that this is specifically your area, and you had a master's on this area, and those teachers do not, right? They don't know how to evaluate, how to assess the students. And I think that they do not know how to do things right in that area. So it is easier to do that way for them. It's easy. Just, we're going to be ignoring that course book and we're going to be buying a new one. This is the easy way to do things.
Thank you for sharing your ideas. So would you like to make any other comments or questions? Sevcan Hocam, would you like to add anything?
Handan Hocam, can I add something?
Sure, we welcome actually.
Thank you. Şeref Emre.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. I think it was very informative and effective, and I also appreciate the effort you put in this research, because it's clear that you try to make something meaningful, okay? And you have some questions in your minds, and you turn them to research questions and try to get some answers to your questions in a scientific way. And that's really good. So rather than a question, I have a suggestion for you. I think there's a problem in the title of your research. Okay, you wrote the ELT students' inefficiency level. I think it's not appropriate to call all the high school ELT students inefficient, okay, in speaking. It's about the group of participants of your research. It's too general and wrong, okay?
Yes. I just realized that actually.
In order to call them inefficient, you should have made this research with the whole high school population in Turkey, and most probably the whole population won't be inefficient in speaking. So yes. Rather, in line with your research questions, you can change it and say the problems that high school ELT learners encounter in speaking, or something like that, okay?
Yes, okay. Actually, I have an idea. what if I add the inefficiency on speaking skills when compared to other skills and their teachers' suggested solutions, then there's no problem, I guess. So actually, in my mind, I thought that there was a comparison. They're inefficient on their speaking skills when compared to other ones. But I didn't add it because it was way too long. So, but I agree with you. It is wrong that way.
Okay,
It's not complete.
Okay.
You might
Thank you again
simply
for
say,
your presentation.
you might simply say high school EFL teachers' perceptions or evaluations of students' ineffective communicative skills or something like that.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, thank you for your suggestions.
Okay.
Last question.
Sure.
We have 2 more minutes, 1 minute maybe.
Okay.
What will you do when you start teaching in, let's say, high schools or in primary or secondary schools in speaking lessons, or what will you do to foster your students' speaking ability?
Actually, let me show you from the table.
Because you said that it's time consuming, classrooms are too crowded.
Yes, those are the participants' ideas about suggestions. So once again, let's look at here. To solve the motivation problem, giving students a good reason to talk is the way to go. Because I was in their shoes back in high school. So I wanted to speak. I wanted to express my opinions and feelings. However, there were no chance for me to speak, something meaningful, because we were only solving some questions and preparing for the university examination. I also conducted a what was it? Speaking. What was it called? The event with the help of Servet teacher. I really forget.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Konuşma etkinlikleri düzenliyordum ya.
Speaking
Topluma
club.
hizmet tarzı.
Speaking club. As I
Speaking
know.
club. Yes, thank you. Speaking club. I conducted speaking club, and what I did back then, I was trying to find some interesting topics. I was trying to meet with learners' needs and interests, and it worked. Actually, it really worked. This is the way to go.
So my suggestions to all of you, not just to you, Şeref, because yet it will be impossible for you to teach speaking in your classes because you'll have overcrowded classes if you study, let's say if you work in Ministry of Education and in universities, in all settings, you'll have lots of students. So my suggestion is to raise an autonomous learners, and the second one, give them homework. We have lots of tools now on the internet. You can assign them to, let's say, describe themselves, describe their, let's say, favorite clothes to wear or foods to eat, and ask them to, let's say, shoot some videos and share it online. So all of their, let's say, classmates can see them and they may have comments on them. They can write and they can, let's say, speak in English. So assignment works in such classes, okay? So assign them and they ask them to have some videos, ask them to speak more outside of the classroom. I think this is the basic solution for us because I'm doing I'm making my students to do this.
Yes, makes sense.
So that you ensure that all of your students are speaking. So if you assign them, they have to do it. So they will have chance to speak after the classroom, outside of the classroom.
Yes, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one more thing as a last words. Look, you also mentioned types of activities as a burden not to make students to speak that much. And or the teachers, if I'm not mistaken, teachers criticize the activities not being communicative that much. So the teachers, I mean, you as future teachers, you need to know how to make or how to write or how to organize your activities as communicative as possible. So this is another thing. Okay, thank you.
I think there's nothing else to say.
Mm-hmm.
No questions?
And our time is up.
Okay. Thank you for listening to me again, and thank you for your
Our pleasure,
participation.
our pleasure, thank you. Okay, so we'll continue with, pardon me, let's finish this.
Hocam, can you hear me clearly?
Just a minute, please, just a minute.